All right, let's jump into it. Coming to you today from Chicago, beautiful 90 degrees outside. The talk of Chicago right now is the pending baseball trade deadline. I think hopefully for Chicago baseball fans, we're about 3 hours away from getting completely new rosters. If you're not focused on baseball today, most of you on this call are focused on the agricultural markets. And given that we're right here at the end of July, the hot topics right now are anticipating the yield forecasts and trying to understand the basis markets as we transition from old crop to new crop, which will be our focus today. My name's Andrew Ward. I have the pleasure of leading the commercial aspects of our commodities business. I've been a student of these markets for 25 years, and the markets continue to teach me new lessons. And I continue to learn more about the markets, and it's great to learn from someone like Will Osnato, who recently joined us here at Barchart. Will comes from a deep understanding of commodity markets through his economics background at Princeton, and then the application of those economics at leading commodity hedge funds across the market. Will recently was at a data research company, Grow Intelligence, and it's great to have him on board here at Barchart. And I think hopefully he can be of value to you in understanding the commodity markets further. Spend a little bit of time on the Barchart story. Will, if you just forward that one, the agenda today. So I'll give you the Barchart story real quickly, and then really what we're here to learn about is a deeper dive into the fundamentals. So we'll look at the cash grain bids that we have to offer, a deeper understanding of our yield forecast model, and then touch upon our fundamental database, our economics, commodity pricing network, and some insights into our future roadmap around the commodity markets. Just real quick, if you do like what we have to say here, a great opportunity to spend time with Barchart team and a lot of your industry peers is at our upcoming Grain Merchandising and Technology Conference, September the 8th to 10th in Orlando. I do have a registration code with a $100 discount. Don't pull out your cameras right now. We'll show this slide again at the end of the presentation, and you can take advantage of that right then. Okay, a little bit about Barchart for those of you who don't know us. We started back in 1996. A lot of our business was centered around helping the exchanges customize and organize their price data. So 1996, here we are, 2024, 28 years of involvement in the markets. Our business is growing really steadily to a position now where we have about 80 employees spread across the US, South America, Western and Eastern Europe. And from our ag division, we have great representation in Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, and Montana. Many of you will know us through our retails offerings on barchart.com. That's where people congregate for information across stocks, options, futures, and currencies. We have about 2 million users, so extremely popular and well known. We have our institutional group that powers many of the risk systems across financial institutions and leading websites, aggregating and disseminating information from about 53 different commodity exchanges today, a vast array of price history across futures and options that power and allow people to stay informed and make better trading decisions across institutions. And the commodities business that I represent has a deep background there in the ag supply chain business, helping people and merchandisers communicate with farmers, stay informed with markets, and it's stretching beyond the originators through the total supply chain, including the transportation, processes, and end user businesses. We have about 650 clients and about 3,000 commodity views on the desktops of merchandisers and risk managers. Our business today, Barchart remains privately held. That's great for us to be an independent data provider, keeps us in control of our roadmap and allows us to grow at the pace of our clients. Highlight packages, when we think about the data that we have in our extensive database, it's our Commodity View Pro desktop application, that really brings this to life. That's the maps, the charts, the integration with Excel that allows the user to customize the extensive data sets and really bring them to life in a desktop application. You'll see our Commodity View Pro across about 3,000 users spread across the globe, and it really is a staple offering and an essential tool for our customer base. And lastly, extremely thankful for our client base. These clients, many of those are at the very large end of the institutions. The thing that these clients have in common is they all rely on Barchart to have accurate, reliable, and timely data sets, whether they're a financial institution, whether they're a commodity broker, whether they're involved in the origination, transportation, or processing of commodities. Every day, names like this turn to Barchart to power their systems, allow them to stay informed. And lastly, a shout out to our ag clients. We're very, very proud of the customers that we get to serve every day across 600 agribusinesses. In many instances, we've grown from very simple offerings as far as communication with farmers. When farmers wanted to see prices on websites, we were one of the first to develop and release those products. The farmer communication and experience space continues to evolve. Last year, I think we sent out 38 million individual text messages to farmers. We now communicate with farmers across apps that are industry leading, allow farmers to see prices, to submit offers, and to see key data around their open contracts and grain and delivery tickets all in one centralized region. And a real core competency of Barchart is the way that we've evolved at the speed of the customers to solve the customers' problems. That's really it from me. Yeah, that's a little background on Barchart. What we really want to do today is to discuss a deeper dive into some of the proprietary data sets that we do have and use Will's background and intelligence to bring those to life to help you make better trading decisions and stay informed. So thank you, Will.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. So we're going to start today with the primary proprietary data at Barchart, and that is the cash grain bids and indexes. Grain bids have really been at the core of Barchart for a long time. We put together the largest database of North American bids from over 4,000 facilities. As we mentioned, those are a lot of our partners. And what you can see, why don't we take a look right at the chart to start, and you can see some of the details that we collect from these grain bids. This is a display by zip code. So when you pull it up by zip code, it automatically selects the closest facilities by distance. It's showing you all the commodity bids, the different delivery periods, price, basis. So there's a lot of depth to the data that we're collecting across all of these facilities. And really what I'm trying to highlight here is one of the best features is how easy it is to access this data from the commodity view, from Excel, our API, because really this is a huge database. That's 100,000 active series when you're talking about all the different grains and oilseeds and products across all of those 4,000 facilities. So ease of use, ease of access is really important. You can pull it up by zip code. You could search by state and county, or you could search by company and put it in our quote board and create custom views so that it's easy to go find these when you're looking for them later, set up these nice interfaces. Another thing I want to highlight is the continuous pricing. So this is important, and you'll note here I just highlighted the last price update. So we're pulling in prices whenever they get posted on a company website. So if a facility posts new bids on their website, which is frequently hosted by us, we're pulling in that data immediately, making it available. There are other providers that only sweep up bids at the end of the day and make those available. So having that live pricing that updates during the day gives you just that little bit more edge in making decisions. And that can mean everything when you're trading. A couple of other things I want to point out that this extensive data can be used in a variety of different ways. So The coverage and detail is obviously well suited for anyone trading physical grain. That's pretty logical with the level of detail in all the bids. You can see neighboring bids, regional comparisons, things like that. But I want to highlight some other potential uses. So it could be used, say, in the crop insurance industry. You could provide this data as market intelligence to your clients. Another idea would be in the food and beverage procurement industry. You could be using this data to track key ingredients, the prices specifically in your key purchasing regions. So that's where that level of detail comes in. And you could create a dashboard of by key ingredient in key areas where you tend to be purchasing from. That could be a good dashboard. Another benefit of this data set is a long history. So we have some series going back as far as 2008. So this can be used for research and risk management. You could look back at similar years, evaluate potential scenarios, just even understanding where basis can go in a stress year and a normal year, just getting a real feel for how these prices operate and seeing that history. And that history can, you can formulate indicators by using this history and the detailed dashboards. And the idea of indicators is sort of where our price indexes come in. So the price indexes we've built on top of all these bids by aggregating them to county, state, and national levels. So looking at the chart right here, you can see a map that is a snapshot of corn basis across the country, the color coding, red being unders, green being over. You can see there's quite a bit of difference. So again, a quick snapshot view, one way to access this, but having indexes that aggregate it, again, bring it up from that super detailed level at every facility, at every delivery, to maybe a little more macro indicators. That can have applications for agribusinesses, for larger agribusinesses looking at across different regions, or just broadly as indicators. And another benefit of the indexes is that it's consolidated time series that can smooth out all the bids that are going into it. Sometimes a single facility doesn't post bids consistently, and by aggregating all the facilities within a county, you're smoothing that out into these better time series that can be used for indicators that are potentially applicable for futures traders or procurement, again, where you're not doing the physical grain transactions and you want something a little bit more macro. So why don't we take a look at an example of exactly this. So the chart we're looking at here is state level corn basis. The solid lines at the top of the chart are Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas. The dashed lines are Indiana and Ohio. And what I'm trying to highlight here is the divergence in basis from the Western Corn Belt to the Eastern Corn Belt, with the Western Corn Belt being much higher there. Now, this was caused by below average yields last crop in those states. And as we're getting to the end of the marketing year, your supplies are getting significantly tighter in those areas, and that's being reflected in basis. And so you can see in a quick chart, that's giving you a good overview of these regional differences. And of course, we have the more depth if you want to explore further into what's causing that or how to take actions on a local level. Now, since these indexes are also constructed with a defined methodology, you'll be able to understand what's going into them, so you can sort of get a reliability with them. Also, with the defined methodology, it gives it benefits where you could use it as a reference instrument, potentially building an insurance product on top of it, or again, using it as a direct input into futures trading. So there's a number of different potential value and use cases for both the grain bids at the really granular level, the indices at a more macro level as indicators. So that's, again, like I mentioned at the top, that's a real core of our business. But I do want to transition to some of the other data that we have that will complement, and I'll sort of bring it back at how it can apply back to the cash prices. So next, we're going to take a look at Barchart's yield forecast models. And like I said, they work well alongside the cash price data. Accurately predicting supply has obvious implications for cash and futures prices. So we'll get into a little bit about how the yield model works. Now, we're actually going to do a full deep dive webinar on the yield models and the data from Planet Labs that we're using on August 12th. You should see emails about that. You can sign up for that. Hopefully you saw the press release that we announced our partnership with Planet Labs, which is a leading satellite data company. We're incorporating their data, their proprietary satellite data, into what was our existing model to enhance it. But again, I'm going to get into all that detail in the webinar. Also, you can feel free to email me. I'd love talking about this stuff, so we can get really deep into it offline. But I want to stay high level for this presentation, so let me step back for a second. So the goal of the yield forecast models are to predict U.S. corn and soybean yields and production for all counties across major producing states. So we do this with an ensemble of machine learning algorithms, which trains the model to take weather and conditions data to predict that final yield. The model produces daily forecasts throughout the growing season for both yield and production. So that's important if you'd rather see the production levels. The map here is showing an example of how the data can be displayed, and I'll show you some other ways we can also see it. But again, just sort of highlighting that regional coverage and granularity. Now we do this with a set of input sources, and that's what the model takes in to train itself to make the predictions. So I mentioned the Planet satellite data, which is listed at the top. That's complemented by a variety of other sources that either influence or directly measure crop growth, things like rainfall and temperature, things like satellite data that's taking images of the crops, as well as survey data from, say, the USDA on the crop conditions or the US Drought Monitor. Now, looking at the chart here, this is an example from Planet highlighting Planet's land surface temperature measurement. The example they're using here is Spain. Spain experienced a massive heat wave and drought in 2023, last year in April, which is the map on the right, compared to the year before, which was normal. And then you can sort of see a timeline of land surface temperature and a nice seasonal pattern below that. And they're highlighting the light blue line being well above the 10-year average. And I bring this up because this sort of gives you a sense that these input sources, temperature and rainfall and NDVI, go in these nice seasonal patterns. And it makes sort of sense that when one of these variables is way above or below normal, that should be telling you something about the crop. Now, and the model then takes the latest values of each of this data sources to predict final yield every day during the season. Now, how do you access the forecasts? Okay, so talking about the output, let's look at just the chart here on the right. This is our commodity view. It's a workspace I set up that shows national and state yields. You have tabs across the top for each state that'll list out actually every ag district and county within the state. So all of the data is really easy to set up in a dashboard. Anytime you click any of the series, it populates the line chart below that. And there you can see the daily path of the forecast. So I mentioned this a couple of times that there's daily forecasts. I think it's particularly important to watch the path of the forecast over the season. That's a more robust indicator. Any spot estimate of yield, particularly earlier in the season, is naturally going to have some error bars around it. And even as you get to the end of the season, your forecast is not going to be perfectly accurate, but the path of the model is really telling you something because it's processing so much data from each of those input sources and trying to quantify it. When there's a significant change in the forecast, that's really telling you something about that the underlying data has changed and is a much more significant indicator. So let's look at an example of that. So in the chart here, we're looking at the national yield forecast this season in blue. We have quite a high forecast right now, and the futures price in red for corn. And so our forecast has been high and steady for a while now, and that's been putting pressure. That's one of the primary reasons that the futures market has been under pressure since mid-June. The crop looks pretty good, A good crop, particularly an above trend crop, would certainly result in higher ending stocks at the end of the upcoming season, and that's naturally going to put pressure on futures prices. And this is really a primary use case of the yield model. Anticipating changes in supply, both nationally and in local areas, and then the resulting impact in futures or basis prices. That's really the main use of the forecast. And then the regional granularity of that forecast is also very useful. So again, looking at maybe regional basis around your various facilities by looking at the county level forecasts, you can look at it across, if your operations are spread out around the country, the flexibility to look at various different regions. And then that granularity can also, again, apply not just to the physical grain trading business, but it can apply to, say, crop insurance, where it can be, you can layer on your exposure to premiums. It can help you manage cash reserves by giving you an indication of risk to any of those outstanding contracts. You can model risk over time. You can use it as information to your customers by seeing what are passing through our yield forecast, or you can potentially build an insurance product directly on top of our yield model. That's a nice partnership idea. So again, a lot of different use cases for both futures and grain price trading in using our yield forecast model. So next, I want to get into some of the fundamental data we have available on the platform. A lot of this is government data. Think about the USDA. That's a lot of stuff that I consider required data. That you want to have alongside all this price data that makes up the bulk of the platform. But even though I consider it required, how you present it and how you build on top of it can really make it a lot more useful. And then at the end, I'm going to highlight some third-party data providers that we have in our pricing network. So starting with some of the government data, we have most of the important information from the USDA. You can see an example of that in the table here, where I'm showing the WASDE supply and demand for corn laid out in my own version, the metrics you would expect. You can see it over time. And we can send you commodity view workspaces or Excel templates to highlight this data, just make it a little bit easier. And that's really sort of the main point, is that the data is available, and we're working on easier ways to deliver it to you instead of just having to download a PDF from the USDA. Now, I'm also generally in the process of making a lot of Excel templates to display this data, because there's just sort of endless different ways you can chop it up and display it. So those will be available. Other templates, just contact us and we can set you up with a few of those. And again, really the goal is to highlight useful indicators. So one thing just to point out at the bottom here, I put a stocks to use indicator, which is common, but it's very powerful. That's the ending stocks divided by total use, the line above it. And that really that's a good indicator, because it sets the tone of where you are in the multi-year supply cycle. And it can be a key indicator for price. So what we're looking at here, just to sort of prove that point, the blue line here is USDA stocks to use for corn, but it is from each WASDE report, so it's each month that they make revisions, going back many years here. And then the red line is corn prices. So just as a quick view of this, you can see when the blue line is at the lowest points in its range, those are the very high price environments. And you can see that sort of long-term cyclicality, vice versa, when there's abundant supply and prices are quite low. Now, so that's pretty obvious what the inverse relationship is. Now, predicting new crop stocks to use, that's the primary responsibility for most research analysts, people who are trying to predict the futures market. So bringing it back to what we already talked about, that's where you can combine the USDA data and Barchart's yield model. So say just take the current USDA forecasts on the demand side, plug in our yield model, see how that changes the stocks to use. And like I mentioned before, we have quite a high yield that clearly would imply lower prices. Here, I want to highlight some of the international data also, just again to make you know that it is available. These are key data sources that cover crop, livestock production, supply and demand data, some price data. Some of these sources also include forecasts for the current year. So Brazil, Argentina, Canada, they're the equivalent types of WASDE reports in those countries. That's very useful. The USDA typically then takes those in a lot of instances and incorporates it in their report. So it's nice to have it directly from the sources in those countries. So especially as we're getting past the U.S. crop season, once we're past harvest and we're getting to South America, I'll likely have probably another webinar and send out a lot more information about our South American data when we're getting closer to their growing season. I want to hit on also, again, data that is available on the platform, economic and energy data. We have a pretty wide range of that. Both these areas can have influence on agriculture prices, farmer profitability, government policy. So again, it's nice to just have it available on the same platform. If you want to see what energy prices are doing or some of the stats there, again, inflation has been an important topic. You just want to have a CPI indicator there next to you. That's all available. You can put it on a commodity view dashboard and be able to switch back and forth for your price dashboards to some economic indicators. Now, this is what I mentioned before. I briefly wanted to touch on some data providers that we've partnered with, and they make their data available on our applications. I want to highlight at the top Commodity3. I really like this data source. They have extremely extensive set of global commodity prices, mostly focused on free on board export prices, but also some domestic farm gate or ex-works prices. And they really cover every agricultural commodity you can think of by product type and major producer. Think about Black Sea wheat by every protein content from both Russian and Ukrainian ports. You can think about, they have really good coverage on softs. So you can think about coffee prices by grade from South America, Africa, and Southeast Asia. So to our folks who are interested in soft commodities and not just the grains and oil seeds, really extensive coverage there. Our food and beverage folks, thinking about if you have a wide range of inputs globally, there's some, and you just need good price indicators for those, either indicative of where those are trending or actually in the specific regions you tend to buy from. It has really good coverage. So talk to us about that. And then some of the other data providers here, they cover biofuels and energy in a lot of detail, as well as additional grains and freight prices. So if you're getting this data, if you've looked for this data other places, again, you can get it on our platform. So it's all in one place. Now, finally, I wanted to mention a few things that we're working on. My role here is to improve access to this data, things we can build on top of it, with the ultimate goal of increasing the research capabilities of the platform so that you all can not just be looking at the prices, but start to try and anticipate them or understand why they've been moving, just making that whole process a lot easier. So I'll hit on a few things that I'm working on. So one project I mentioned before, I'm going to be expanding the Excel template library. So it'll give users some preset analysis, different ways to view the data. Maybe that's just much better in a table view or in Excel specifically. So why don't we take a closer look at what I have prepared here. This is an example where we can elevate the existing data. It's the WASDE balance sheet again, this time for soybeans, but it's shown as an evolution over time, with the first column being the first forecast from last year of the old crops balance sheet, and then every month updating the forecast up until this most recent report. So I find this a particularly useful way to remember the path of estimates. It's really helpful when you're looking back at a price chart. We can't remember what was necessarily going on. I mean, you have all this access to price charts. That's very easy, but it's difficult to remember what were the fundamentals driving those price changes at the time. So this type of view, you can look back, not just this season, but previous seasons, get a much better look of a much better understanding of what the prevailing thought of the supply and demand balance sheet was at the time. Now, looking a little closer at some of the data here, the first one at the top, I'm highlighting when the WASDE updates acreage from the acreage report. Last year, they cut 4 million acres of soybeans. That was a pretty big event. Then the next box, you're seeing the evolution of yield as NASS updates their yield through August through January. They cut yields initially and then brought them back. Then on the bottom right, you're seeing the evolution of ending stocks as all of the demand lines play out as you go through the marketing year. So again, useful to just look at it to see how all these changes evolved over the season. And again, this is an example of a variety of different templates we can use to highlight the fundamental data presented in a more useful way, just making it easier to digest. Another thing is obviously adding new data sets. We want to round out our coverage, which could be coverage of more commodities like softs that I've highlighted here. Could be more regional data, but really want to focus on key indicators. And again, the goal being to enable more research and analysis by the users. Like I mentioned here, I'm focusing on some more softs, sugar in Brazil, coffee and cocoa, stocks, cotton on call, those type of things. There's lots of data out there. So actually, this is where I'd love feedback from the people on the call, the users of the platform, because there is so much data out there. There's only so much we can add, but what you really want to see, that you want to see alongside the prices and this other data that we already have available, feedback from you is going to be key in prioritizing that and what we should get on the platform. The last project, which is a little further out that I want to highlight, Barchart has extensive weather and geospatial data available on the platform currently via our API. These are the inputs that go into the yield model that I talked about before, but we also want to make these available in other tools. So this is an idea. The chart we're looking at here is NDVI, the vegetative index based on satellite images, pretty popular indicator. It is weighted by a corn crop mass across the entire United States. So that's what we're looking at as a seasonal chart. And it's also showing the entire history of that satellite back to 2001. So this one chart is aggregating a huge amount of data. Think about all the pixels of NDVI from the satellite across the entire United States, filtering out only the ones that are relevant for corn, and giving you all of that aggregated across the United States in one time series, aggregated in one chart, and an ability to compare that historically. So in one quick look, you can look at the red line where we are currently, see that it's slightly above the average line in black, and say in one broad stroke that corn, based on this vegetative index, is above average. And you can do these same types of charts across all of those different input variables that I mentioned, temperature, rainfall, and really just give you access to some of those inputs. There could be regional flexibility. You can aggregate those up to states, groups of counties, and that's really just a weighting scheme because we have all of that data available for every single county. And so this is just an idea of a visualization tool. The flexibility of the system, again, is you could select maybe a number of different facilities that you have and do the same type of thing, taking a single variable, weighting it across all your facilities and looking at it on one chart. And so these are, again, just a set of geospatial and weather indicators. So we're thinking about trying to make this into a visual tool. And like I said, all of this data is available already via our API. So that's everything I had, and I want to turn it back over to Andrew.
Yeah, just use the opportunity in the couple of minutes that we have remaining to answer any of your questions. If you want to submit those in the chat box. And we'll also an opportunity, if you don't mind putting that slide up with the discount voucher for our conference here in October for those to capture that. Will and I are always available. Yeah. So for people who have, we can dive very deeply into a lot of these data sets to reach out to us. And we are more than happy to spend the time. I think my opening remarks, yeah, I'm a student of the markets. We're all students of the markets. We love kind of discussing and nerding out on S&Ds and some of the latest and greatest approaches to these markets. And I think that's kind of what gets us out of bed each day is how do we make a better platform with the right indicators to help all of you. Looking at the first question there, does Barchart offer any training or education resources to help users get started with data as well as commodity view? Absolutely. If you're a subscriber to the commodity view, we have a team of 5 people that can help you set up your initial workspaces, give you those demonstrations and help you navigate the system. Happy to organize a session, a one-to-one session or wider group. So absolutely, we can do that.
Another
question from Steve there for you, Will.
Yeah. So the Excel template. So the one I showed was a concept, but we do have ones. I actually just put a couple together that are showing that can show you the month-over-month change across basically everything in the WASD report. So I'm in the process of setting up workspaces in Commodity View. I can send you a list of those, and then we'll also convert those into Excel templates. So I'm working on that this week. We do have a website. We're going to try and upload that, but I can also send you directly some of those websites. So just email us, or we'll send out a few of those templates. Yeah, I can answer Grace's question about what weather data sources are you using. So a couple different sources, satellite data from for NDVI and LSTs from MODIS. We are also using GHCN weather stations. Obviously, the planet data that we get directly from them that covers a couple of their proprietary indicators for soil moisture, their own land surface temperature, as well as a vegetative optical density, which is something that they came up with. We also have CPC temperature and rainfall data, which is which basically is built on top of the station data. So a couple different sources, but we can also give you a more detailed list.
Yep. Quick question there on implied vol, being able to chart historical implied vol across the futures contracts. That should all be there. We've made some recent enhancements whereby we actually now provide the functionality to do look backs. So taking a specific strike, examining and comparing implied vol levels today as to where they were 10 days, 15, 30 days ago. Yeah, so there's a good history of the Greeks for your options. Okay, starting to come thick and fast now, Will.
Okay, yeah, I can. All right, so this one is what other types of data are available in Commodity View that are complementary to the yield forecasting information? Can you view weather, USDA, et cetera, type of information individually or in different modules? So yes, so everything I highlighted, that USDA data, the cash bids and grains, indices, the yield forecast model, all of that is available in Commodity View via the API, via the Excel add-in. So the way I've been putting together is you have different workspaces that you can tab through at the bottom. So I have one, and I can send any of these to you. I have one dedicated to all the yield forecasts across all the states and counties. Then I have a separate one for WASD reports. I have one for export sales from the USDA, one for the weekly crop conditions, looking at the different charts for every state, by the good, excellent, fair, very poor, etc. conditions in both line charts and in quote boards. So you can set up these dashboards so that you can quickly swap between yield forecasts, all your price charts, quote boards, and some boards for USDA data or Brazil or Argentina and other places. And again, like to this question before, we're here to help you. We're not expecting you to put these together by your on yourself. So, I have a lot prepared. We're going to keep making more and more. If you just want to ping us a question, hey, you talked about that WASD board. Can you send it to us? We can send you just a URL that you can then load into your commodity view, and it just pulls up that workspace right onto your platform. So that's super easy. Same thing with as I roll out some Excel templates, it's easy to send that to you, where it's again using our plugin to pull in the data live.
Yep. In time for one more question there, Will. That's regarding demos at our conference. We've actually scheduled this year a 60-minute session on Sunday evening, whereby some of our team will walk through some of the key features of Commodity View, and then turn the floor over to individual one-on-one demos. So the Sunday evening of our conference would be a great way to do a deep dive into the Commodity View application. I think we're almost at the allotted time there, Will. So thank everybody. We know it's a busy time of the year. It's an exciting time of the year. Yeah, this is where we're making yields. So hopefully today we've shed some light on how we come about with our yield numbers, and hopefully you walk away with a better understanding of the functionality that we have at Barchart, and wish you all success for the upcoming the rest of the growing season, and then the upcoming harvest. So love to see you in Orlando. The next key event for us will be middle of August, when we'll do an update on our crop yields pre the WASD report then. So look forward to many of you joining us again. Thank you.
Thank you all.